And welcome into Poke the Bear episode 72, the Frank Vetrano episode. UMass superstar, Frank the Tank Vetrano, who, by the way, has been killing it in Florida. Interesting, he was with the Bruins for a little while as a forward, and he didn't really pan out. I feel like that's happened before. That has happened after him.
Sounds kind of familiar, Evan. Actually,
Might be foreshadowing. Might be foreshadowing something we talk about in this episode. I don't know. Anyways, that is Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Conor, what is up?
Evan, doing well. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. You just got your third shot.
I did.
Your arm.
Yes, I'm triple boosted, so if I tail off as this goes on, then you have an excuse. This is obviously recording before the Bruins Predators game, so if you go on BostonSportsJournal.com, hopefully I have coherent musings as we discuss what happens afterwards in this game, where the Bruins are once again shorthanded. But so far, a little painful, but still, for the greater good, get boosted.
And for people who don't know, the reason you don't sound great is not because of the booster. It is because
that'd be extremely concerning if I felt like this like 45 minutes after shot. But no, I'm also fighting a little cold. So
yeah, I'm not saying it's your flu game, but
it feels like it. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see when we get to the third period of this game tonight.
Yeah, I remember when I got my initial vaccine back in April now. There was a Bruins game that night, and by the third period, I was like, whoa, this is I don't feel so good. But worked out well. It's worked for me thus far, so I can't complain. Anyways, enough vaccination talk. There are bigger things to get to. There were a lot of things this week. This was as action-packed a week as I think we've had in the regular season in a while. And I think it's only going to get crazier because Jake DeBrusk has to get traded at some point. Tuukka Rask has to get re-signed, or will get, but we'll get to that later. There's a lot of things that are coming down the horizon. We'll start with DeBrusk because that is the biggest one. It's funny, like normally we'd be like, oh, sorry about not being able to do it after the Predators game or whatnot, but I don't even know if we're going to be talking about the game. Like this is more bigger picture stuff in this episode. So the Jake DeBrusk thing has been an interesting development. There's been a lot to it this week from the request to fans booing him to some Twitter spats. There's been a lot going on with this, which basically hits at the biggest point. There needs to be a resolution done, also known as a trade needs to happen within the next couple days. But unfortunately, the Bruins are shorthanded with injury and Marchand suspension. So this needs to happen quick. It's happening really quick.
Yeah, no. I mean, you look at it in the ideal scenario, obviously, without factoring the roster, which is pretty much stuck where it is right now, right? You can't call up anyone from Providence because there's a full-blown COVID outbreak down there. You're kind of stuck in this situation where you're stuck playing DeBrusk, who doesn't want to be here. And even though, Don Sweeney talked on Tuesday, brought up the silver lining of, well, if he's in the lineup and playing, it'll elevate his value. It's like, well, I don't know. You watched that game on Tuesday, didn't inspire much confidence, and whether it be his own play kind of being underwhelming, or you're looking at, getting booed by the fans. It's just a crappy situation all around for everyone at this point. So I don't know how much more it's going to help you out, other than the fact that you just need a body in the lineup to have DeBrusk in there. Because I don't know if he's gonna, unless he's gonna, score a hat trick in this game against Nashville tonight, which very well could happen. Who knows? But all things considered, you don't expect him to all of a sudden elevate his stock right now, where you're going from, all right, we're trading him for Mason Appleton, to all of a sudden it's a 1-for-1 trade for Brock Besser, right? I don't think anything is going to drastically change within the next couple of days. It's going to alter that. So I think for the Bruins, whether it's the distraction of it, which, I don't know if the players themselves are harping on that now, the distraction of it, but whether it's, media or what have you, it's going to keep on getting talked about until he's moved. Whether it's, the awkward situation of having him in the lineup where, he's going to play, but still, you also don't want to go out there and get hurt, and risk getting injured there in that situation, to the fact that, if he's playing on Saturday night against the Lightning, he's probably still going to get a fair share booze still. So, and you can debate what have you, whether or not that's the best route to take for a fan, for a guy who just honestly seems like he needs a fresh start somewhere else, and I think both parties would benefit from it. But whichever way you kind of slice it, they have to get the wheels turning and get a trade set up pretty soon, because this can't be carrying into later this month, next month, what have you, because it's going to be just continuing to take the headlines, and it just makes for an uncomfortable situation all around.
Yeah, and again, I mean, think about like for you listeners, you have a job and you want to leave, and you say, "Hey, I'm looking for other jobs." You don't want to be looking for other jobs for like 5 months. You
Yes.
want to just like get out. You're like, I'm done with this, and I feel like that's kind of DeBrusk. I also do feel bad for him in the sense that the agent coming out and saying this. Now, I would guess he consulted DeBrusk before. Like I don't think he just like came out and said it. Like Alan Walsh's meme of the
Yes.
sword through Flurry's back.
Yes. I
Um,
just imagine Flurry like checking his phone, seeing that like, shit.
Oh, damn it. But I do feel bad in that sense where it's like I feel like I don't know if that was the smartest move. I get from his perspective of like you want to get a trade done soon, and that does get a trade done soon because now every team knows. Um, but from a Bruins standpoint, I think leaking that definitely did not help things at all. And I also think from Jake DeBrusk's standpoint, it doesn't help because you did it at a time when there's no like you can't call up Providence forwards and have them slot in. You can't sit DeBrusk until he's traded. Like you got to play him. And I think that's a really weird dynamic, as you said, like getting booed at home, which again, I don't know if that's the right move by fans. I don't think it is. But just a weird situation, really weird situation. Ever since the Oreos piece came out, Connor, it's downhill. Come on.
I know
Um,
I'm dropping the ball.
the Oreo curse. But it kind of it leads to the obvious question of what will he get in return. That's kind of what everyone's debating, and everyone has a different answer because it's so hard to tell, right? On the one hand, this is a forward with potential. He's speedy. He had 27 goals a few years ago. He's got high ceiling, good kid, like usually pretty good attitude. But on the downside, and the downsides outweigh the positives in getting a big return for him. The downside is he's been struggling for a year and a half now, almost 2 years. Um, Effort has been an issue at times. Now you also have the agent coming out saying that he's requested a trade, so no team is going to come with their best offer for that. So, what is a reasonable trade look like in this situation to you?
Yeah, I mean it's tough because I think our immediate reaction when the news first broke on Monday was like, all right, it's going to be an underwhelming return, especially if let's say it's a 1-for-1 deal because as much as I think Darren Dreger, I think, reported on Tuesday, like, oh, there's 12 teams involved and everyone's interested in him. Like, yeah, no shit. It's like a guy who almost scored 30 goals at 22 who, like, I think most people are interested because it's like, all right, yeah, we have him in a new situation, new surroundings, clean slate. He's probably going to bounce back. And maybe he's not a 30 goal scorer, but he could be a very effective middle six, 15, 20 goal guy in our lineup. So, of course, teams are interested in him. But I think when you look at just the baseline production, which has dropped significantly, you look at the fact that I think he's counting, about 4 million in true salary this year. He's going to be an RFA next year, but I think he's got a qualifying offer for 4.5 million. So if you're a team that trades for him, it's like, all right, do we pay him even more against the cap to keep him for another year, or are we going to not qualify him and have him hit free agency? So you look at that, and when our first reaction, I think, was a lot of, all right, they're going to get an underwhelming return, whether that's, Ryan Strome or like even like Kravtsov over in New York, like another fellow, I don't want to say project, but a guy who needs a new fresh start somewhere, could be good. Not like a set guy that's going to instantly, turn the fortunes of your team. So looking at a guy like that, or even like draft capital, which I wouldn't surprise me in terms of they just want to get that contract off the books and get some more draft pick and compensation. But we'll see kind of what they focus on in terms of what you're going to give up, because even though his value has dropped a little bit, he's still a valuable asset to DeBrusk, right? Like where he's a legit guy that in the right situation could do very well, and I think the Bruins are cognizant of that, so they're not going to let him go for nothing. So whether that's you're looking at more of like package deals, like that wouldn't surprise me if it's like, all right, we're not trading him in the vacuum of we have to just move this one individual player. But if you're putting him in a larger package where it's, I don't know, him, a first, and like Studnicka, does that get you something more significant, right? Like, and we can debate whether or not they should keep on moving, sacrificing draft capital. But if DeBrusk is one piece of a bigger puzzle that gets you take your pick, right? Hurdle, JT Miller, something like that, which I would significantly help your team both right now and in the years going forward where you get a legit center. Maybe that's kind of the angle they take. But again, it's tough to, you know, find the right fit and what you want to do when also the fact that your roster is pretty much, stuck in neutral right now. You can't make much moves. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're looking at maybe some more of the bigger picture moves as opposed to, you know, a Mason Appleton or like a Lawson Krause or something like that.
It's an early deadline type move, right? Like it's, you're kind of getting a head start on the deadline. And I agree with you. I don't, if they trade him 1-for-1, I don't think you're getting much. Like I have no need for Mason Appleton or Lawson Krause or one of these guys who's, as you said, Ryan Strome, like a project type guy. And maybe they could find their game here, but what, what reason would you think they would find their game here? How many forwards have left here who didn't find their game here, right? Heinen, DeBrusk, Donato, Bjork,
Vetrano.
Vetrano. I'm definitely missing people. I mean, you guys even before Cassie, JFK and Spooner, like all these guys, they have trouble with these fringe top 6 forwards and making them into something. So what reason would you have to believe that Mason Appleton comes here and becomes a second line winger or a steady third line presence? So to me, it's the package move. And I think the only way I like the deal if it's 1-for-1, realistically, is if it's for a right shot defenseman. Because you need some depth on that right side on D. So if you can get a right shot defenseman for DeBrusk straight up, I don't hate that. Like I'm fine with that. Depends obviously who the right shot defenseman is. And that's kind of the thing. Who is it going to be? They're not just trading defensemen around the NHL. So yeah, I mean the package move, if you did, DeBrusk a second and maybe a prospect for Miller or Brock Besser. I mean, Besser's kind of been trade rumors forever around him, but he was pretty consistent for a few years. So maybe he's a guy you get. I wouldn't hate that. And that makes you better because, again, this team isn't scoring at all. Like,
Yeah,
isn't
you
scoring.
you
I mean,
desperately need another like top 6 weapon, and again, especially for whether it's a guy like JT Miller or Tomas Hertl. I think you've seen now what you desperately need in terms of having more strength down the middle. Just not only the domino effect of um, having another guy that maybe can draw more play out of Taylor Hall, because I think you saw in that game on Tuesday. Granted, Bruins didn't score a 5-on-5 goal, but Taylor Hall with Patrice Bergeron and David Pastrnak look pretty good. Again,
pretty
most
good.
guys look pretty good when you're with those two other guys, but you put him with elite level talent. I think it draws the best out of Taylor Hall's game. Now, is JT Miller like an elite talent? He's pretty damn good. Like same with Tomas Hertl. There's still legit proven, top line centers on a lot of other teams. So um, cost might be a lot, but if it one gets you a spot where you've got a legit, guy down the middle that you can build moving forward. I know JT Miller's 28. I think Tomas Hertl is 27. So not just within the vacuum of this year, but over the next couple of years. And also you benefit from Charlie Coyle getting slotted down to 3C, which again, I don't think Charlie Coyle has been particularly bad this year. I think he's been pretty solid, but in terms of maximizing his value, you would rather him be at the 3C than the 2C, right? So if that's the route they take, it would make a lot of sense in terms of you've got this asset that even though he might be a bit of a sunk cost in terms of his production dropping into Brusque, he's still a valuable piece. So if you can add other sweetness to it, whether it's more draft capital or prospects, perhaps you can get something there. I mean, there's a lot of desperate teams out there already, and Jim Benning somehow is still running things in Vancouver, and he doesn't have the best track record. So if I was the Bruins, I'd probably give them a call. Just check in.
I mean, the tough part is DeBrusk was scratched against Jim Benning's team.
Yes,
And
not
again,
great.
like you mentioned Stanika. That's another guy who's at his lowest trade value. I mean, I've said this all year. Like he needs to be at a higher trade value for when he gets traded, and he will not be if he's included in this deal. Now, again, there's been no real reports about Stanika being involved, but if they were to do a package deal, that would make sense, right? Stanika kind of needs a fresh start. DeBrusk needs a fresh start and a pick. And there you go. There you go for Brock Besser or Tomas Hertl. With the Hertl, I think it'd probably be more of like a first. Tuukka Rask is basically Boston Bruin.
Yeah,
it's like it's not even. I don't even think this is going to surprise anybody.
During the Tuesday news dump of the entire day. Like if like Tuukka just walked into the media conference room, it would not have surprised me at all. Like if he just walked in, he's like, I'm back. He has little faxed paper that Michael Jordan sent when he came back to the Bulls.
Or when Manny Ramirez went to the Dodgers and he did that press conference, he was like, "I'm back."
Yes, it's going to be the least surprising thing.
Yes. I think I tweeted this. I think the biggest news of the week for the Bruins was that kid hanging from the glass. That was incredible. It's just
True
that.
Boston Bruins fan moment there. Like,
Yes, that absolutely shows it. Pastrnak throws a puck over the glass. First of all, how about the fact that the kid's up there, right? Like the kid
yes,
is hanging from the glass in the first place. The dad's got him up there, and then the puck comes over. Obviously, the kid's not catching it, and the dad just kind of abandons the son, hanging on the glass. Just hanging on for dear life. But that's an all time moment. I'm glad Nesson caught that
yes, thank
because like
God.
that is great. Also, glad the kid's okay. That's glad the kid hung on. He
Also
didn't just go,
important,
"Oh, the
yes.
puck," and he just
Yes,
let's go.
also important.
Also very important. But Tuukka Rask is pretty much back. Sweeney almost confirmed it, saying that if Rask is feeling good and wants to sign, that they will sign him. Rask has said before that he wants to come back and only plays for the Bruins. So, like, I think the real question is what the money's going to be. That's, I think, the only real question. And obviously, then what happens to Olmark and Swayman?
Yeah, it's going to be very complicated to see how they kind of settle out that rotation. But in terms of do you need him? Yes, you absolutely do need him right now. And it's one of those things where you look at the flaws of this Bruins team, and of course, secondary scoring. It's been an issue for a long time. You thought you solved it when David Krejci and Taylor Hall were on a line together, which helped out quite a bit. Now you're kind of back at square one there. But you look at another flaw of this team, it's got to be the fact that their goaltending's been league average.
Average.
Yeah,
It's
league
average. It's
average.
just,
Not to say it's outright bad, but you look at so many of these. When you're a team that doesn't score a lot of goals, you're in a lot of these one goal games. Sometimes it's just a timely save or two that it's a difference between 2 points or 0 points in the standings, right? So whether it be like the third period against the Oilers or a few of these other games where it got away from them. Like, say what you will about Tuukka Rask, but I think if you have him healthy and in net to start the year, you go from 11-8 to you know, 13-6 maybe, and that feels a
yeah.
lot better, right? It looks a lot better than 11-8, right? Um, so I think from the Bruins, it's going to be key to get him back. It's important to see if he's up to speed and healthy, which you always are concerned about that with these hip injuries. Granted, same thing that Tim Thomas went through right before the 2010-11 season, which was a pretty good year for him. So who knows
Solid.
there? We'll see. But I think for the Bruins, yeah, it's a no-brainer in terms of bringing him aboard. Which it's funny because you look at like the underlying stats of the defense, and it goes to show. I think sometimes it's tough to read through some of them because the Bruins are like first in the league in expected goals against. Like they're really not giving up a lot of high-quality chances. It's just unfortunately when they do, it's really evident to see. It's like usually like an odd man rush or a full-on breakdown that makes it really evident. But all things considered, like the defense is doing its part in terms of negating those chances. You're just not getting the stop you need as the last line of defense, which I think Tuukka will help quite a bit. So it's absolutely going to help you out. But as you said, it's how do you then balance it out? Because right now you're looking at most likely the easiest scenario there is Swayman goes down to Providence, gets regular reps, and then you've got Rask and Omar, which again, then you're kind of stuck in that awkward situation of you got a guy who's making $5 million as your backup who, it's one thing if it's Yaroslav Halak, but Olmark hasn't really put together those strong performances yet that, inspire you to have this kind of backup guy there. So again, we've talked about how the Bruins approach this offseason in terms of their goaltending and why they, didn't want to do a Swayman Vladar pairing, a tandem, because that would be way too risky, asking way too much of these rookies. But um, their efforts to, kind of play it safe and cover all their bases by signing a guy like Olmark, it's kind of not blown up in their face, but it's not gone according to plan, right? In terms of now you've got two guys playing league average hockey, and now you have Rask coming in to more or less try to bail you out. Now you've got to kind of pick up the pieces and put them where they may.
They haven't stolen a game yet. Like
Yeah,
I think that's the biggest thing. Like I have not looked at a game they've won yet and been like, that's because of the goaltending.
yeah,
That is because their goaltending won them that game. There has not been that game yet. And again, I mean, just like the other night, they're struggling to score goals. Olmark lets in 2 goals on 16 shots. Not great.
yeah.
Not great. So, yeah, no, they need Rask back. I think that's pretty undisputable, and I think he will be back. It just comes down to what the money will be. I mean, maybe it would be veterans minimum. Like that might be it, but I'd have to think it would be a little more considering he's probably going to be your starter.
Yeah,
So I don't know why
I,
you
I
would
would
start
imagine
for
it would be
that.
something prorated, but also like I mean, Rask has said before in WEI, he's like, yeah, I'll be a cheap goalie. I'll willing to play for cheap. Doesn't matter to me. But like, also like, all right, does that mean you're signing a vet minimum, or are you signing like $2 million or something like that? Right. Like, I still think he's going to be below what he was paid before, but um, I think you have to look at Rask and be realistic in terms of the leverage you now have of like, oh, like you guys need me? All right. Like, I don't think he's going to, put them over the coals, the Bruins, but still, I think he's due more than just like a vet minimum deal. So how that impacts how you're juggling the cap, or maybe that's why DeBrusk is more of a cap dumping move. Like, you have to factor those things in there, because as much as I think we'd like for the Bruins in terms of just, cap management to have him signed to a cheap deal with Rask, dude deserves a little bit more green coming his way, because I mean he's still, barring severe rust from coming off that surgery, still a really good goalie.
Very good goalie. He's also coming back at a weird time, or could be, because the Bruins are going through not hell right now, not yet. The Providence Bruins are going through hell with COVID.
Yes.
But the Bruins are, I mean, Bruce Cassidy's in COVID protocols. We record this. They just played Tyler Bertuzzi, who is unvaxxed and was playing against them and had COVID and was up in their face for most of the game.
Like the entire game. That dude literally plays like every friggin' shift for that team.
He is so good, by the way. Like, he is effective. He is very effective.
It's a pain in the ass.
Yes, the pain in the ass type player. But you got that. So you have these instances with COVID, and they can't call anybody up. Weird situation. Not a good situation either, because what do you do?
Yeah, no, it's rough. And even like, if it was an ideal situation, which you're not in anyway, with the fact that you've got DeBrusk, requesting a trade, but let's say you had the ability to bring up guys from Providence. Hey, maybe now is the chance to see how a guy like Steen or Jesper Froden or one of these other guys could do in the short term, in terms of giving them some reps as you sit DeBrusk and protect your asset as you look for a trade. Don't have that right now, right? And like, I mean, God forbid, on Wednesday, Bergeron had the day off because I think he blocked a shot with his foot during Tuesday's game against Detroit, and he missed practice. Like, if Bergeron's out, it's already terrible news in terms of you just don't have your top line center. But like, is Connor Clifton going to be like a forward? Like, what are you going to do, right? Like, you don't really have any wiggle room at all to tinker with your roster. So like, if other guys get hurt now, you have to imagine going into Saturday's game against Tampa, the fact that Providence has canceled their games this weekend, probably don't have the luxury of getting guys from that roster this weekend as well. So, God forbid someone blocks a shot and is dinged up or hurt during this game against Nashville. What do you do next game, right? Like, if you got like one or two other guys on the shelf and you go into a game against Tampa, which granted you're already without Brad Marchand, and you're missing more guys, and you can't plug and place guys like a Stedniker or a Steen, what have you, you're pretty much up the creek, right? Like, it's not great for what the situation is right now. And thankfully, so far, at least, the Bruins seem to have avoided COVID outbreaks on the NHL roster, which you're always concerned about when Cassidy tests positive, and you're worried about that. But it shows you, though, just the domino effect of, even if your farm system is dealing with it, it really limits what you can do up at the NHL level.
Yeah, no, this is it's not good. I mean, even Chris Kelly is in COVID protocol, right? So they can't even call him in. They can't even have him dressed as a fourth line center. Ridiculous. So hopefully that ends up being okay within the next week, and they kind of dodge that bullet. But Brad Marchand, suspension, 3 games. We both obviously think it was too much. Wasn't the right thing. But what's unfortunate is now that past kind of comes back into play. He's the Brad Marchand of old, and look at Brad Marchand. He's up to his dirty tricks again. How hard is it going to be for him to sort of get past this?
I mean, I think it's going to stay with him for his entire career. I mean, you look at just the way he's played over the last couple of seasons, and the fact that he's had pretty much a clean rap sheet in terms of what he's done, and he's elevated his game to go beyond what he's previously known for, and establish himself as perhaps like the best top left wing in the game. And one incident like this happens, and all of a sudden it's back to square one, right? Where you talk about all this stuff, and then he talks about the Panarin incident, and everyone's outraged about that again. Like, it's all these things that I think it just shows that all it takes is one kind of incident or one kind of avenue to look back on his past ledger that brings it all back. So it's a tough situation for him. Granted, I think he's cognizant of the fact that a lot of it's of his own doing. Like, you got to look at what he did in the past. But I think for a guy like him, who I think as he gets older, has become very aware of, his legacy and how he wants to be remembered. And he would much rather be remembered for being a guy who, elevated his game into being a top wing in today's game. A guy who's played with an edge, but, doesn't want to be remembered as being the guy who just used Daniel Sedin's face as a speed bag, right? Like that's what guys at like Sully's Tap will like talk about as the first thing in Marchand. But I think he'd much rather be known for establishing himself as a top offensive threat, as a leader in the Bruins room, all those things. I think that means a lot to him. So I'm sure for him, it's deflating at times when all it takes is one kind of slip up or what have you that brings this narrative back. But unfortunately, it's kind of the narrative he kind of carved out for himself in years past. And well, I'm sure, these guys want to move on and put that in the rearview mirror when you've got, kind of the reputation that Marchand kind of cultivated for himself during those early years. Unfortunately, it's going to follow you even when you're, 34 and at like this stage of your career. It's still going to stick with you.
The bad boy image. You're right, though. I
Yeah.
mean, like, again, it was his doing when he was younger. Like, it's not just going to go away. I mean, he's done a lot to change that, for sure. But, like, we've said this a lot. Fans around the National Hockey League, players around the National Hockey League, if they're not your team, right, if you're not the fan of that team or you're not on that team, it takes, like, a few years for the narrative to change, even after it's actually changed, right? Like, for so many years, players would say Carey Price was the best goalie in the NHL. And this was, Vasilevsky was nasty and other goalies had surpassed him. So it takes time to change things. And now this has kind of come back. So not great for Marchand. But anyways, that is Poke the Bear episode 72. Connor, before we go, what can the people go look forward to over at BSJ?
Yeah, we'll be looking at, obviously, breaking down this game against Nashville on Thursday, looking at the tough situation facing the Bruins in terms of their roster situation, looking at potential trade partners for the Bruins with Jake DeBrusk, guys they could get back. So all that stuff will be over at BSJ. So subscribe to BostonSportsJournal.com. Want to follow me on Twitter? You can do that at ConorRyan_93.
Go to all that. That's Connor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Poke the Bear listeners, have a great rest of your day.